The Dentalpreneur Podcast. Okay, doctor, it's time to put down that handpiece. You're listening to the show dedicated to helping dentists get their lives back. It's time to decrease your stress, increase your profitability, and regain your passion. Now introducing your host, Dr. Mark Costas.
Welcome to a very special joint episode of Shared Practices and the Dentalpreneur with Dr. Richard Lowe and Dr. Mark Costas. Mark, thanks for talking with us and hanging out.
You know, dude, when I saw your name on the schedule this morning, I was thinking back and I was reading your bio and I'm like, yeah, you had a 6-year commitment in the Army and I met you before you even went.
Which sure did.
Crazy. Yeah. And dude, you've accomplished so much. Since you and I first started talking, you've lived a whole lifetime in the period of time that I met you, which is really, really impressive. I'm impressed by your trajectory, dude. Seriously. And I'm not just saying that because it's your show.
Well, thank you. And it's been a blur. And it's also kind of funny because I realized that to people who've known people like me and George before we started the podcast and before we started this company, it's weird to realize that oh, isn't Shared Practices? They're like those acquisition people like that. They just talk about the pre-owner stuff. And it's like, well, I guess we've kind of done a few things and it's fun to see the whole arc when you stand back and look at it. And I was telling people at Voices of Dentistry this last weekend of, remembering very early on being encouraged by you, by Alan Mead, by Howard Ferran to start the podcast in the first place, even though it was very much an imposter syndrome situation of who's going to listen to a new grad who's stuck in the Army? And I really appreciated the thing that helped me the most, and I think gave Shared Practices a lot of traction early on, was your piece of advice of give away your best content because everyone sucks at implementing. And, it's not true. Not everyone sucks at implementing. People struggle to implement. So if you give out the best stuff, you're going to help people. And then they're going to come back to you and say, hey, this is great. I need help. Can you help me more? And that we really leaned into that and didn't hold back. And I think that's really where we got a bunch of traction. So that was directly from my interactions with you and listening to you. I really, really appreciated that mentorship and advice.
Oh, well, thank you, man. I embody that and I believe it 100% in my soul. I'll literally give an address, say Friday afternoon, to our mastermind members who pay a lot of money to be in the mastermind and have direct access to me and our awesome 16 black belt coaches. So they will get up and talk. I'll get up and talk. We'll give the inside scoop. This is on my mind right now. Stream of consciousness sometimes very, very formal, PowerPoint, here's something very, very tactical. 3 days later on Monday, I'll put it up on the podcast and people are like, oh my God, dude, what about the people that paid you $35,000 a year for this information? It's no, you guys don't understand. This, you give away all of the stuff to people, whether or not they're paying you for it. The masterminders have a different, value proposition. They get one-on-one access to incredible people. They have this huge community of 200 people that share best practices amongst themselves. And, although there's formal content that I'm quote unquote giving away, it's my nature to want to share that with everybody that's on the podcast. And it has never bit me. Nobody's ever said, I quit the mastermind because you give all the stuff away for free. They're like, I feel even more special because they don't even know what happened when the camera wasn't on, Right. So I've always felt that way. I've had a mentor that told me that, and I've actually partnered with other people and done collaborations, and they're like, there's no way I'm giving away my secret sauce. This is too valuable. This stuff right here, this is worth millions. And I'm like, dude, give it away. Let's talk about it on the podcast. They're like, no way. And it's always those people that don't grow because they have a scarcity mentality, And I will say one more thing. Reflecting back to when I met you, I sensed this entrepreneurialism, the spirit in you that was almost I felt as though, oh no, that might go away in 6 years when he's in this environment. The Army might
beat it out of me? Is that what you're worried about?
Well, it's in an environment that doesn't exactly cultivate entrepreneurialism and
correct,
and radically different innovative thinking. Let's be honest. It's great for what it is, but I was like, oh no, is he going to come out, with no entrepreneurial spirit? But I mean, that if you're still an entrepreneur after all of that, 6 years, there's nothing that's going to be able to stop you. So that's kind of a testament to you.
That's funny that you had that note, that sentiment. And actually, I would say that the fun part about being in the Army with other Army dentists was it gave me fuel of how can I make the journey to practice ownership and the journey to success so straightforward that someone who's been in the Army for 6 or 7 years and is super scared about getting out and making that leap from organized dentistry where it's all paid for and your production doesn't really change things, and it's you can't affect the direct leadership and organizational change as fast or as easy as you could in private practice. Can we give them a path so that they could, with confidence, buy a practice or start a practice or be successful? And that was fuel, because I literally had the patient. You've got the patient avatar of your ideal patient. Mm-hmm. I had my ideal listener avatar, and it was the dentist sitting next to me, who it's like, okay, I think I want to get out of the Army, maybe, but I just don't know, and I don't have the tools. And I was like, okay, let's make a podcast for that guy. And so it's so funny that you said that. Well, at Voices of Dentistry, you shared something that stunned me, and I didn't realize this. You just barely put down the handpiece. After building everything you've built, you've been clinical while doing all these things, and in shared practices, there's been some short clinical arcs. George retired clinically at age 26 or 27. I always forget. And we have people, we talk about this entrepreneurial spectrum of there's this clinical bent. I would rather nothing than, be taking a new CE course or trying a new piece of technology. And then there's the entrepreneurial bent of I would love to open and scale and grow and develop people. And sometimes it's a continuum of like, I lean more clinical and I don't really like the business stuff, or I lean more business and I don't really love doing dentistry. Mm-hmm. And some people legitimately are both. They can be all in on the clinical and they can be all in on the business side. And that's a really cool place to be. If you really love chairside clinical dentistry and you really love being a business owner, like, what better place to be than dentistry? Mm-hmm. But to hear you're like, I've officially put the handpiece down. I was really excited for you. And also, I wanted to get your take. I wanted to hear, your reflections looking back. And I also wanted to know if you wished you'd done it sooner, if you wish you'd waited longer, and where you fell on that spectrum of, am I doing this because I really enjoy this and I love this? Am I doing this because I couldn't find a doctor to plug in this office, or, the balance? And I know you've got all the options in the world. You could have done whatever you wanted for the last 10, 15 years of DSI and dentistry. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on that spectrum and how it feels to put that handpiece down.
Yeah, you're the first person to ask me that question since I did put the handpiece down. We'll put a marker in time that was 3 weeks ago, and when I did my last clinical day of dentistry. So 21 years at the chair. And man, what an incredible journey it's been. I will say, and I've shared this with my group, maybe a couple times on the podcast, just in passing. Ryan Isaac has this new, he's the host of the Dentist Money Show, and he has this new,
I love Ryan.
He's amazing. He has this new, like subcategory of episodes that he calls Dentists Are People Too. And he just, we spoke for like, it must have been at almost 2 hours. It's like Joe Rogan style. He's just like, boom, let's just get real, dude. And we just spoke about everything, like the whole arc of like what got you into dentistry, what'd you do before dentistry. He talked about my dad's passing. He talked about what are you passionate now about? What's your next chapter? And he got deep. So he spoke about this stuff too. So I feel like it's kind of fresh, this line of questioning, but the way that you asked it is very, very interesting. So I draw this triangle often to our mastermind group, and it is called the wealth triad. So at the apex of the triangle is net worth. To the lower left, it's freedom number. And then to the lower right, it's legacy number. So those are the three numbers that we kind of talk about all the time in our mastermind group. So this freedom number basically means that you're going to accumulate enough net worth, right? So you multiply it by 0.4 and you know exactly how much you could be potentially making per month. And if that number exceeds your cash burn, your basically your personal monthly break even, then you know you're free, right? So and the cool thing about the freedom number is if you do it right, the principal never goes away, right? So if you have the right investments going, the principal never goes away. Your heirs get that. And in the way, and I just did this, you can structure it in a way in your family trust, in your will, that they never get to touch the principal. And the principal actually grows if you're only withdrawing the 4%, because, you know, there's good times and bad times, but it's going to average more than 4%. So you're living off the proceeds of, you know, this nest egg. And the money, the value of your nest egg is actually going up, and you're not needing to work anymore. So the legacy number means that you never have to touch this original principal. You can pass that on from heir to heir to heir, generation to generation to generation. This nest egg is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. That's how the Kennedys did it. That's how some of the richest people in history have done it. And the legacy number also means that if I continue to work and generate cash even past my freedom number, then I could do really cool things. Like we just founded Smile Outreach International, which is our foundational nonprofit through DSI. We're going to put fixed clinics. And when I say we're going to do this, this is not a dream. This is going to be a reality. And this is the way that I think. We're going to put fixed clinics in Southeast Asia, the Philippines, Dominican Republic, Mexico, all around Africa. And I have the ability through this microphone to be able to say, I need money. Give me money for Smile Outreach International. We're going to build a new facility in Tanzania. Everybody step up and give me some money. I could say that to the vendors. I could say that to the podcast audience. And instead of saying, hey, I have this great event coming up, I'm like, hey, come to Tanzania for our ribbon cutting and bring your scrubs, because we're gonna work on underserved people, right? So that's part of my legacy number. It's going to happen. That's chapter 2 for me. But going back to your question, like, why did I do this so long? Why did I wait so long to put the handpiece down? I'm rephrasing your question.
Which I don't like. I'm trying to like not be rude. Of like, I know you reached your freedom number a while ago. Yeah. You know, so you must be doing this because you want to, and so, but it's hard. Dentistry is hard, and like you have to want to be there. So I was trying to be nice, but it's like, you didn't have to be clinical. You wanted to be clinical for this long.
Right, exactly. So the freedom number, I hit the freedom number, and I didn't realize that I did, but when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, that was about 10 years ago. So about 10 years ago, I could have hung up the handpiece and actually not even had DSI, and things would have been fine. We would have lived a very, very comfortable lifestyle. Cool. But when I did realize that I hit my freedom number, everything changed about the way that I approached clinical dentistry. I could work with the people I wanted to work with. I could do the cases I wanted to do. I could continue to increase my clinical suite and go into advanced surgeries and do the things that actually turned me on about dentistry in the first place, and not worry about, like, although I did to the very end, but not worried so much about class 2s and single tooth extractions and working on people that I didn't like. So it changed the way that I came to the office. And a big part of that was that there was a couple stretches there where, you know, I lost an associate or two at the wrong time, and I just went in there and I kept the office running. You know, I could, you know, in comparison to a brand new graduate, I could show up 2.5 days a week and do 5 days of dentistry for what they could produce. So I did that. I did that for a number of years, and it was, to me, it was easy. It was autopilot, but there was, you know, the value of an hour of my time. It just didn't make sense to continue to do, even if I was producing $2,000 of dentistry an hour. It didn't make sense for me to go do that anymore. And you know, I had a ton of guilt. A lot of people do. these are practices. These were my very first practices. I built 16 practices, but these were my very first practices, the ones that are closest to my home. So I saw those like my children, and I have people, my babies, and I have people that have worked with me for 20 years.
Right.
Like literally, like this is an extension of my family. So I'm like, so I'm selling my babies, and it's so you have this guilt surrounding that. The other 13 practices came and went, and I didn't feel any emotion attached to them. That was a business decision, no big deal. These ones were different because I didn't need the liquidation event, but I did need to liberate my time. So that's what came down to my final decision to finally sell the final 4 practices, and it's such a blessing because my partner of 10 years, he was a partner of me with me in one of the practices. He's just the nicest guy in the world, a good leader, fantastic clinician. He's been with me in these practices for 10 years. He decided that he wanted to take over all of them. And so we went from practice to practice one day because we didn't want the girls to be like texting each other and being like, guess what? So we literally said, okay, we're going to start here at 1 o'clock. We're going to make the announcement, go to the next practice at 2 o'clock, go to the next practice at 3 o'clock. And we did that together. And we got slightly different reactions from each dental practice. But
each child, you've got children that are going to react different to everything. Not saying the dental practices, but it's your baby, and everyone is going to be a little different.
Exactly. So we got slightly different reactions in each place. There was tears, but for the most part, everybody was like, thank God, thank God it's Dr. Reed. Thank you for not selling to a DSO. Thank you for not going corporate. Thank you for, passing on the legacy of his awesome leadership. And we've been like this two-headed monster for, the last 10 years together, just kind of putting out fires and like nurturing people and freeing people to a new future. We've done that together for a long time. So there's a whole lot of trust built up. And it just worked out perfectly that I got to hand my babies over to, somebody that had co-parented with me for so long, So that's cool. So it actually worked out well, and I feel very, very good about it. Every day I wake up with a smile on my face since it happened. So,
well, that's really cool that you got to be there through thick and thin, and I'm sure there was long days and times when timing was awkward, when doctors left and you had to fill in where it was hard, but you were committed to these practices, and you were committed to the people, and you were committed to the patients there, and to have a satisfying close like that is really amazing. And the thing I've realized, I have realized this last year. It dawned on me. It's funny how sometimes these things take a little while for you to realize. I'm like, oh, I guess I'm a less good practice owner because I've been part-time clinical. I went from 4 days a week at the beginning of the year down to 2 days a week. And the 2 days I was in, I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. And there wasn't much time for culture and meetings and reconnecting with the team because it was all the patients that had to see me because they were my all-on-4 patients or overdenture patients. And the culture in the office suffered, and I was a less good practice owner because my time and attention was split between here's everything going on in shared practices. Here's everything going on in the practice. And I'm back. I'm back to 3 days clinical. And, I've got a doctor who I was kind of holding the spot for, and he went a different direction. That's okay. And now I'm on the hunt. I'm looking for a really, really good doctor to come join our practice. And I've got a few people I'm talking with. But it was there's these funny moments. I had a similar moment in residency, and I was like, oh, I can't be as good as a specialist at everything. I'm never going to be as good as an endodontist or as good as a periodontist. I did an extra residency to get advanced training in all the things. And it took me halfway through residency to realize like, oh, you'll never be as efficient as an oral surgeon taking out wisdom teeth because you don't do that one thing all day, every day. It was a similar kind of dumb aha moment this year of crap. I'm a less good practice owner when my time and attention is split. And my team suffers and my patients suffer. And so it's forcing me to like look at some of these things and make some of these decisions about how do I want to use my clinical time and split my time between shared practices. And so it's just interesting to hear you navigate that and to realize that, yeah, you'd hit that freedom number. It changed the flavor and the pressure of doing dentistry, but you had a commitment that you wanted to see to the end.
Yeah, for sure. Let me tell you a quick story if you don't mind. To your point, right? So, at one point I sold, this is pretty early on in the journey. I wish I would have kept these practices. They were great cash flowing practices, but they were for the same reason, difficult to run because I was an absentee owner. I didn't have any partners, and they were single doctor practices. There were a 4 operatory practice and a 5 operatory practice. We couldn't fit 2 providers in there, which is, nowadays I know never a single doctor practice if you can avoid it, right? And everything has to be 7+ operatories because you got to be able to get 2 people in there, 2 doctors in there. Because if you lose one, you need to have a production generating, office, at least to cover, the monthly break even. So I sold these 2 practices. Wish I would have held on to them, but it was a nice windfall for, a 29-year-old, 7+ figure windfall. So I didn't have any advisors at the time. I didn't know what to do with 7 figures after taxes, right? So I did what everybody that's an awesome entrepreneur does. I diversified, right? So I bought a car wash, of course, because that's what you do. And then I bought a gym franchise because I like working out, and I had some friends that could help me run that. And then I bought some rental properties at the exact wrong time. And then I took an index options trading course over the weekend, and I learned how to trade index options, right? So I had, $300,000 in this account. I had 3 screens at my dental office, and I would, give anesthetic. I'd go over and I'd place a trade, and I'd go cut the crown prep, and I'd go place another trade. I'd buy, I'd sell. And I was up like $50,000 like in the first month. And I was like, dude, I'm quitting dentistry. I'm going to chill out. I'm going to move to Costa Rica. This is going to be amazing. Like easy money. And you know what happens every single time that somebody tells a story like this, over the next 2 months, I lost $150,000, and not including the $50,000 that I was up. Right. So I took a huge loss, and I realized, the realization was, I'm competing with people that do this for a living, have a formal degree in this. I have a 48-hour crash course on this. It's no wonder that I lost all of my money. And it goes back to exactly what you are talking about. If you are unfocused and your attention is split in many different areas, there's no way that you're going to be able to have a world-class company when you are doing a dental practice, a consultancy, a podcast, whatever other entrepreneurial ventures you have going on, because you're competing with people in the marketplace that only do that one thing. And that was my big realization that I'm only going to be as good as 100% of focus. And when you're doing your 2 days of dentistry, if you're anything like me, you're also running 16 other practices, and you're thinking about your next podcast guest, and you're thinking about the problem with the client that you're coaching also. So you'll never be as good as the person that only works 2 days a week and focuses on the dentistry at that time, because you're never 100% focused. And I realized that about myself. And that was another reason why I decided to let the 4 other practices go, because I felt like my attention for too many years was split in many different directions. And although that was good enough, it wasn't as good as it can be. So I was not as good a practice owner and leader as I could have been in the practices, because I have DSI and podcast and everything else. And I also wasn't as good of a coach and a consultant and a podcaster, because I had clinical dentistry going on at the same time. So you had to pick your battles, and we all, even if we don't want to admit it, we're all mortal, and we have only a certain number of hours in the day. And during those hours, you only have so much focus and attention that you could give to one thing at one time.
Yeah. And that's where those hard decisions come in. I want to circle back to something you were talking about a little earlier with the triad. We're talking about net worth. We're talking about your freedom number and the legacy wealth. And this is an interesting conversation. And also that story you just shared is the exact reason that when I found Dentist Advisors, I was a 4th-year dental student. It was when I was working with Howard Ferran. I was down at Dentaltown, and Ryan was there. He was at the Dentaltown offices, and I was grilling him on okay, do you sell insurance? Do you, what are you guys all about? And he passed all the check boxes of oh, this is not a slimy advisor.
Yeah.
And they specialize in helping dentists, and they're really good educators and all these things. And that's why I just send people to them, because I'm like, listen, make your money in dentistry. Let them help you with this. Don't go screw it up on your own.
Yep. Don't make your own website. Don't fix your own chairs, and don't do your own financial planning. You're right. These people do it for a living 24 hours a day. So go with an expert, right?
Right. And so then the challenges that you have once you've got a really good dental practice or a large practice, or it's just you and it's really efficient, it's running on all cylinders. Now you've got to decide what to do with your money. And this question, this is a debate that me and my other partners at Shared Practices have on this legacy wealth, and this idea of, am I creating a nest egg for my kids? Am I creating something that I can use to serve and charity and other things? I have some strong opinions about fears of giving my children the problem of wealth and taking away the problem of having to figure out how to survive and how to provide for yourself and all of those things. And I'm on the side of the fence of like, I kind of don't want to have my children inherit and know that they're set from day one, because for me, the struggle of the challenge of figuring out, how am I going to provide for my family? How am I going to increase my ability to earn and save and invest and gain the knowledge? It's almost like it counts because it's real and it's on the line. My survival, my family's survival. And I do think there's something lost when you take that element of like, oh no, you've got to figure out how to provide for yourself and your family. I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, because my partners and I, we all disagree on this. We've got different takes, and some of us are on one side versus the other of generational wealth versus not. And I know you probably had these conversations, and you've got these opinions, and have talked with your mastermind members. I wanted to hear your take on specifically generational wealth, parenting, and like making sure that I'm not setting them up for a weirder set of challenges by being wealthy from day one. And I want to hear your philosophy around that.
Yeah, that is a tough one. That is a tough one, because I'm a first generation American. I'm the son of immigrants. I was the first Costas born in the United States. I have 3 boys, so they're going to carry on the Costas name. Everything that I have, everything I've been able to accomplish has come because of the struggle, because I was one generation removed from a suitcase and $100 bill when they got to the United States and didn't speak the language. Everything that I have came from that DNA, and the fact that I had to put myself through undergrad, the fact that I had to work, 4 part-time jobs in order to pay for my tuition. And
I literally also had 4 part-time jobs in undergrad. There's something about that. Yeah,
there is. And that tenacity and that ability to kind of work through that and navigate those storms kind of build a hardier person that I think, not only you alluded to this, that it feels better when you do accomplish something, but it makes you able to accomplish more things, right? It creates a different character and mindset that you don't get if things come to you too easily. So I will say that it's very difficult. I have a 19-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 13-year-old. My 19-year-old is on a full ride scholarship from daddy right now. He had the ability to have a full ride scholarship to play soccer, and he elected to take daddy's scholarship and not play athletics anymore. And there's no way I didn't even have that opportunity or option. I was a football player in college, but I only lasted 1 year because I got really hurt. So I had to figure out how I was going to pay for the next 3 years. And not only that, my sons, this is going to sound bougie as hell, but they're all club soccer or baseball players, as was my 19-year-old. And that means that they play in 4 different states, and their practices are 2 hours away, because we live in a remote little town, and they have to get to soccer practice or baseball practice. We have an airplane to take them to practice, dude. I mean,
hop on the PJ.
We are not in a situation where they are struggling in any way, and they don't want for anything. And we have this thing where, like, Leslie and I just did our family trust. Like, we already know the triggers for when they're going to get their inheritance if both of us pass away. So I just recently read this book that's called Die with Zero. And it's it's a very, very good book, and it turns that on its head. It's like life is about experiences and spending your money now, and legacy should be spent now. Basically, if you want to give your kids an eventual inheritance, don't wait till they're 75 and you're 95. Give it to them now, let them do something positive with it, and die with zero, basically. And his whole formula is like how you figure out exactly to have $0 on your last day. And I mean, I think I'm somewhere in the middle, but I don't know how to navigate that, Richard. I don't know how to navigate how I don't want my kids to suffer for a day, but at the same time, I want them to have enough, enough tenacity to get through difficult times. And I don't know if I'm enabling too soft of gentlemen. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know.
And it can be done. Like you can raise really good human beings who also have great opportunity because of the wealth that you've built, the opportunity you've built. But I do think that it creates a different set of challenges as a parent, and that you wouldn't have to face as much if they knew that, like, okay, I got to make this on my own. I got to forge my own way.
Yeah.
And in some ways, we work so hard because like we want the things for our kids and our family that maybe we didn't have, or to avoid some of the hardship and pain that we had. Mm-hmm. But it made us who we are at the same time. And so it's not an easy to answer question. And my current philosophy is like, I'm a cheap date. I've got a middle class lifestyle. We've kind of got our stuff, and it then makes you think about these long term. Okay, what's my impact? And I think the way to channel that is what you're doing with the clinical outreach, and it's like, okay, I'm going to build. Yeah, there's going to be some opportunity for my kids here, but also let's let them see and participate in building things of meaning and charity, and they can have hard things and accomplish hard things in sports and perform at a high level and accomplish that same grit and in other ways. But I do want to, I don't know if there's, like you said, there's no answer to that. It's just a different set of challenges as a parent. Yep. And I am less confident in my ability to parent bougie kids. Is I guess the long of it is that I'm like, okay, I kind of know I know the playbook when you're kind of middle class. I don't know the playbook when you get bougie, and I'm afraid I'm going to screw it up, or that even if I do okay, that my neighbors, the kids next door in the bougie neighborhood, their parents and their way of life is going to screw them up by proxy.
Yeah,
So exactly. Like I said, if we figure it out, there's definitely a book in there for us to write.
You're so right, though. That, I mean, those are some of the things. Like my 19-year-old came with me for the last 5 years to the Dominican Republic. That was our father-son trip, right? So every single year he came with me. My 13-year-old now is coming with me this year in June for our 10-day mission trip. And when they see people that not only don't have like a nice home, they don't have a home, or they live in a cement block house with plastic on for a roof, and they don't have not Jordans, they have no shoes, no electricity, no running water, those sorts of things. And you have to take time to point those out. Like, see, the reason that it smells right here is because there's no plumbing. This open canal is sewage, and the reason that there's trash everywhere is because there's no trash pickup. This is the way these people live. Compare that to how you live, and beating that over their head over and over again is the best thing that I have to, like, all right, appreciate what you have and don't be a bougie kid. And they don't act that way, and I wouldn't tolerate it for a second, but they still have never really felt real, stress when it comes to financial matters, for sure.
Well, I think actually we do have a formula that we can pull out of here. So
okay, let's do it, please. I need it.
There's the gratitude that comes from service and realizing what you truly have and what other people don't have. Mm-hmm. So, the service and the humanitarian, if you've got bougie kids, don't shelter them in the bubble and they never see anything else.
Good point.
Get them out there, get them serving, get them working hard, help them be humble through service. And then on the other side, build the work ethic through whether that's athletics or art or something that they're performing at a high level. They're competing. They're learning that I have to work hard to succeed. If you can compare that humility and gratitude on one side with the work ethic on the other side, the chances that your kids don't get screwed up by your wealth are much lower. Can't guarantee it's zero, but much lower.
Great formula. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to clip it. I'm going to transcribe it. I'm going to laminate it, put it in my wallet. Okay, I like it.
Well, you're already living it. I just pulled it out of you. So, I'm the one taking notes here. So
love it, brother. Love it.
Well, I did want to ask, before we wrap this up, I wanted to talk a little bit about the logistics of this humanitarian effort that you're putting together, because that's similar to you. Like, I've seen the power and the reach of podcast and being connected with all these amazing dentists, and I want to start a podcast, and it's just bandwidth is like we've been talking about, one of the issues. Start a podcast called Dentists Doing Good, where we do the shared practices version of start to finish. What does this look like to start a nonprofit, to build a clinic, or to do something here locally, or to orient your practice around a cause, and have this podcast, Dentists Doing Good, where we get into it and go into the logistics and the pros and the cons and how it gets messy and how you can protect yourself, despite going to third world countries and doing dentistry in difficult areas. But I wanted to hear, what kinds of humanitarian work have you found the most satisfying and most impactful? And what have you learned from that in what you're doing moving forward? Because you've been involved in this all along, and now you've got an idea of, okay, here's how to do this and make it sustainable, or here's how to do this and make the most impact. And those are conversations I'm really excited to have, and I want your take on that. Yeah.
So thank you. Great question. I started with my kind of dental outreach when I was in my first year out. I stumbled across the Brighter Way Clinic, which was called the downtown, I think it was the Homeless Shelter Dental Clinic, run by Chris Volchek down in downtown Phoenix. It was literally located on the property of a homeless shelter, I guess you can call it. But it was a huge homeless shelter behind the gates. People just kind of living everywhere in like with
real need.
Like real need. A lot of mental illness around there. Just you get out of your car and there's just people just kind of flopping everywhere. It was the people just living everywhere in the streets. But then you could go inside and get food and shelter, because Phoenix is very, very hot in the summertime. And so this was a very, very amazing cause by this gentleman named Chris Volchek. And there was a single wide trailer right there on the homeless shelter grounds. And you would go in there and you would be side by side. There'd be somebody doing hygiene, and then right next to that chair, you'd be doing dentistry, extractions, simple fillings, cleanings, and stuff like that. That's how I started. Now it's called the Brighter Way Clinic, and Chris has raised tons of funds. And now it's this like state-of-the-art, beautiful facility. Dental students rotate through there. Dentists come in from all over the country to do volunteer hours there. Beautifully run, just beautiful vision. He executed it perfectly over the last 20 plus years. So that was my first foray into kind of charitable dentistry. Then the next year I bought my very first practice. Every single year after that, we did 1 or 2 free dental days. We usually have a vet day. So any vet in our practice or from the community that doesn't have dental work or dental coverage, which a lot of them don't, we would do anything that they wanted for free. Anything from implants to extractions to partials to full dentures, still doing that in all of my offices. And then we had a free dental day for people that just couldn't afford dentistry from the community. So that's how I did my missionary work for the greater part of my career. 6 or 7 years ago, I want to say probably 7 years ago, I started traveling internationally for mission work. And that I found that rewarding in a whole different way. For the same reason that I want to expose my kids to it, I need to be reminded of how blessed I am for that. I've always been such a huge proponent of mission work, because you walk away from any free dental day, free vet day, mission trip, walking on clouds, because you could be so disenchanted and burnt out and physically and emotionally exhausted with dentistry. And paradoxically, the antidote is to do more of it, but for free, for people that can't afford it. And all of a sudden you are reminded of this glorious skill set that we have, this amazing ability to heal people and to do some good in the world with what we spent 4 years or 8 years learning, to do, right? And I think we forget that so quickly because Mrs. Jones has another freaking, denture sore spot. And, hygiene is not getting along with back office again. Dang it, they're fighting. There's so much drama in the office. I hate dentistry. It's like you need a reminder of why you got into dentistry in the first place and actually what you have the ability to give and to do. And so it's always been my advice to people that come to me burnt out and like, hey, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to do anything but dentistry. 50% of the dental population wish they would have selected a different career. I always say, go do a mission trip, man. Just unplug for a week and go help some people with your amazing skill set. And they 100% of the time they come back refreshed and grateful at a higher level. So logistically speaking, we're launching this thing. First of all, it takes a long time. It took us 9 months to get our 501c3. So that's
a whole process. And I think there could be a whole episode on like, what does this mean to be a nonprofit and all the stuff that goes into that? Because it's completely different than being a traditional business owner. Yeah, totally different. It's through the IRS, and we're a non-taxed entity, but now we have to go through the process of getting approved in every single state. All 50 states you have to be approved in individually to accept donations. So if I want to accept donations from Hawaii, I need to be approved for Hawaii donations. So now we're in the process of doing that. We're kicking off at the summit this year is June 16th and 17th, the Dental Success Summit, which is our big show every year. We usually have 700 to 1,000 people. This year it's in San Antonio. We can only fit 650 people in this year, even though we had 700 something last year. We can only fit 650. It's kind of a boutique hotel, so they don't have as much seating as the JW Marriott in Scottsdale, where we usually have it. But it's a very, very nice bougie hotel. I love it. So we decided to have it there for our 10th anniversary. And Saturday night is what we call family dinner. It's usually just our mastermind members. We have, our 200 mastermind members plus a date. So it's usually like 400 people at this awesome party. The last 2 years, it's been a white attire party. So everybody shows up dressed in all white. So much fun. This year, we're changing the family dinner or the family reunion dinner to a black tie gala. So anybody that wants to come, it's $250 a ticket. 100% of the proceeds go to Smile Outreach International. So we can fit 350 people into the gala. Super excited about that. We're going to have, live auction items. We're going to have silent auction items. And I foot the bill for the food and beverage and everything. And then all the ticket prices and all that anybody pays for any of the silent auction gifts or live auction gifts go to the foundation. So the foundation is going to actually, my vision is that we're going to build physical buildings in the most difficult places to gain access to care around the world. And we're going to start by figuring out where that first location is going to be, and we're going to build it. So that's cool. That's the vision. That's exciting. Okay, so you figured out, okay, here's the nonprofit side of things. We're working on those logistics. Here's the fundraising side of things. Mm-hmm. And then it's we're gonna have to have more conversations as you scout locations, you deal with construction abroad, you deal with licensure things, and being able to do nonprofit. In some countries, you probably do whatever you want, and in other countries, it's probably an issue. And having to navigate all that and getting dentists in and out and keeping them safe. And I think there's a lot that goes into this, and doing it in a way that has the most long-term impact. And I've seen people that have worked to build these clinics internationally, bringing dentists in, but also identifying local people and local talent and building a local presence that can, sustain and take care of those patients in between those trips. Is really, really powerful. So I'm excited to hear how this all rolls forward, and I'm sign me up. I'm first on the list of when that first call goes out, and I'm sure there's plenty of other people on that list too that would love to be there and love to be involved. I appreciate that, man. What's cool about this mission trip that I do in the DR, really quick, this has been going for 40 years,
and they have pictures all the way back to the original. I've been going for 7 years now, and Dr. Aaron Nicholas has been going for 30 years. He's one of our awesome black belt coaches. But anyway, they have pictures of these kids, like before there was headlamps and stuff, they have pictures of these kids with like flashlights, and that would be their job. Like these little 7, 8, and 9-year-old locals with no shoes on, like holding the flashlight while the doctors were taking out teeth, and they would get water for people, and they would run around, and they were able to sponsor like a couple generations of these little kids that got interested in dentistry because they were volunteering. They became local dentists, and every year they come back. So half of our contingent in the Dominican Republic are kids that started off holding flashlights, got sponsored to go to college and then dental school, and now are practicing dentists in the Dominican Republic. So half of them are locals that that this actual mission paid for to get their dental license, and then the other half are Americans, and we work together. It's amazing. It's amazing.
That's incredible. That's really cool. Okay. Yeah. See, these are the stories that like I would love to aggregate and put in one place so that as people solve that first problem that we talked about of that net worth triad, and now they've got another leg of the triangle to play with, this legacy wealth, figuring out the real, how can you make the most impact in the world in a way that, gives and continues to grow, like these mission trips that you've talked about, the organizations you've worked with. There's a lot to talk about here. So Mark, thank you for being willing to have another conversation. We just talked at VOD, and this was a lot of fun to hear your arc and the struggles and challenges and the excitement to be truly non-clinical other than humanitarian dentistry. That's the best kind of dentistry, is if the only dentistry you do is the most satisfying, most impactful stuff, the free stuff. That's a good way to be a dentist.
Oh, it's the best way to be a dentist, dude. Trust me. Listen, I felt selfish the entire time because you were asking such great questions when we only spoke about me. Can I get a commitment to you to be on my podcast to talk about you? Because your career trajectory has been absolutely stunning. And I think it would be a great learning experience for all of our people as well.
Of course. Thanks, Mark. No, yeah, I'd love to talk. And I think the danger of getting two podcasters together is like there's literally no end. We could talk for days, and it'd be a blast the entire time. So yeah, anytime you want me on, I'm there.
Okay. Well, I want to say, even though we didn't get into it, for the people that are listening on my podcast, congratulations on all of your success. I'm not going to be condescending to say I'm proud of you, but I am inspired by all that you have managed to accomplish since the time that we met. In a relatively short period of time, you've done great things in our profession.
Thank you for paving the way and making dental podcasting a thing, and hosting Voices of Dentistry all these years, and your impact not on me but on hundreds and thousands of other dentists, and it's been fun. So Mark, thank you.
All right, my friend. All right, I'm gonna say I'll close it. Can I close it?
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Dr. Mark Costas and Dr. Richard Lowe from the Shared Practices Podcast and the Dentalpreneur Podcast. Until next time.